Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Dear families, community members, welcome again to the Parenting Together as Muslims series. I think, alhamdulillah, it's been running really, really well. And, this is a topic today that we're going to discuss, which I think is of extreme importance because we're all faced with it. This whole thing about these emerging and new technologies and social media and how we handle it. So I really I'm looking forward to what Sister Saadia is going to tell us. But every time before we start, we reveal what we're going to do the next week. And alhamdulillah, I've confirmed that inshallah, Sheikh Yasser Fahmy will do a session for us next week on parenting together as Muslims. Obviously bringing much more of the Islamic perspective as well, and bringing his kind of background to it. So we look forward to that as well as the series kind of comes to a conclusion perhaps next week. Before that, and before we allow Sister Saadia the floor, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a background on technology from an Islamic perspective quickly. So obviously we're living in an age of information, and how we grasp that information and how we learn to use it, and importantly pass it on to our children, not only potentially defines how they will use it vis-a-vis their faith and their other beliefs, but it may also come to define how we as a community of Muslims kind of interact with social media. And I'll try to frame some of this debate around technology with a story from the Quran, and then kind of two very kind of interesting and insightful du'as. So in Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells the angels that had wondered why Allah would place man, who makes mischief and he spills blood on earth, when they, the angels, worship him night and day. But then Allah, the all-knowing, he tells them, I know what you do not know. And he acquaints man, i.e. Allah acquaints Adam with the concept of information. The Almighty says, and he taught Adam the names of all things and placed them before the angels and said, tell me the nature of these things if you are right. And then the angels immediately realized that they did not know these and glorified Allah. And of course, they were able to discern that Adam knew or was able to comprehend what they were not able to. And what this verse reveals to us is that the concept of knowledge and of information has been demonstrated since the creation of man. So Allah renders the quest for information part of our nature, which in a way distinguishes man from the remainder of creation. So a newer technology would fall into this kind of realm. But at the same time, we see, interestingly, the other side from a dua of Ibn Majah, where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafiyan wa rizqan tayyiban wa amalan mutaqabbalan. O Allah, indeed I ask you for beneficial knowledge and for a good halal provision and actions which are accepted. So this dua, it covers a number of aspects, but interestingly, the first thing it asks for is knowledge, which is significant in its own right, but it asks specifically for beneficial knowledge, which you ask Allah to increase you, but in corollary also reveals that there is knowledge that can be potentially not beneficially, potentially harmful to those who may be exposed to it. So there is exposure to morally or ethically corrupt knowledge that could lead one away from a righteous path. And not only to a path of ambiguity, but down, what today are called these rabbit holes of all sorts of jahiliyyah. So actually knowledge that may take you backwards. So there is morally corrupt knowledge that may weaken your faith or may increase envy or jealousy. And then there's a type of knowledge that perhaps we can call false knowledge, which, for example, was on full display on January 6th at the time of that insurrection at the Capitol, where you had adherents to all sorts of kind of conspiracy theories that on face values are complete nonsense. Yet so many people completely believed in them. In fact, like so many things, our faith is actually ahead of its time. There's another dua that's credited to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, where he says, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arina al-batula batula warzuqna ijtinaba. Oh Allah, show us truth as truth and inspire us to follow it, show us falsehood as falsehood, and inspire us to abstain from it. So this truly is a dua that was ahead of its time. And if you think about how relevant it is to our current time, it's unbelievable. Yet we know that, technological advances can be transformative, and if not adopted, can leave the non-adopters behind. This famous story of the printing press in the Ottoman Empire. They were the dominant empire at the time, but at the time of the printing press's invention, they rejected it and didn't adopt it until 3 centuries later, by which time their empire was in, irretrievable, kind of inevitable decline. So interestingly, up until very recently, the spread of religious knowledge throughout the Muslim world has continued to be limited by a lack of readily available communication tools. Literature has been in books, which, by the way, are revered in our tradition, but are expensive. They're often in Arabic only. Now, however, with the wide dissemination of data and the digital information age that we live in, the Holy Quran, even with tajweed, is widely available, as you know. We can read the Quran and we can double click on a pronunciation of a line or an ayah, and you have master readers that are available at the click of a button. And this is amazing. Add to this the translations in almost any language that you can get. And you can, alhamdulillah, begin to appreciate the transformative technology that you can carry in the palm of your hand. And on top of this, we can get hadith and tafsir. And this can be distributed globally very easily. It's also worth reflecting that on the majority of the population of the world that live in the Islamic world, they remain illiterate. So the current technologies allow audiobooks, maybe even YouTube channels, Islamic videos from scholars to be viewed around the world. So there's so many advantages to these technologies. The issue is in how they are used by those whose impressions of the world are still forming, like our children, and how they can be optimized to bring our children closer to our goal of beneficial knowledge for them, and at the same time provide some kind of a barrier for the potential of their exploitation or manipulation or false knowledge. So Sister Saadia will inshallah explore this with us today in tonight's topic, and maybe if needed, we can kind of grow this further. So as you all know, we are alhamdulillah blessed to have all these really kind of talented individuals in our community who work tirelessly behind the scenes, and Sister Saadia is certainly one of them. By the way, she helps me tremendously. All of those posters that you see are actually done by her. And I'd like to thank her publicly today for all of the help that she gives us in that regard. But she in herself is a very talented individual, alhamdulillah. May Allah increase her. As you know, she's a computer scientist and engineer. She trained at MIT and at Brown, and is now working on this for the school curriculum. So, they identified this as a problem, and now, inshallah, they're going to teach our kids this. It's going to start to be inculcated in the school, Sunday school curriculum, maybe from kind of next year. So with that, I'll kind of hand it over to Sister Saadia, and thank you so much again for presenting this to us.
Thank you, Brother Faisal. I'm going to start sharing my screen and move directly into the presentation. Okay, so this is our topic today, and let's move on, making sure that my arrows are working. Yeah, so this is a little bit about me. I think this was shown last week also. The gist of it is I've been working in technology for a very, very long time. In fact, my favorite pet phrase for a long time was, I had an email address before any of you knew what email was, for a lot of you. But I've also, as Brother Faisal said, realized that what our kids are being faced with in their real lives is not separate from what we're teaching them about in Sunday school. And we want to be able to bring in our new middle school curriculum issues that they are dealing with every day. We have been working, there's a couple of other people here today from our education committee, Salman and Amanda. And this is going to be one of the modules talking about social media and technology. So I will get to some portions of my presentation, which I'll identify that these are from our curriculum. But in general, this is going to be a presentation of what you as parents need to know. All right. So this is the overview that went out in the email. I think it just discusses what we have here. Okay, so I want to start by looking back through the decades. And I want you to think about what your world was like when you were 12 years old. And of course, you know, maybe we've grown up in different decades, but there was, you know, differences that happened, drastic differences. And what were your parents in control of at that time? That's a good question. So we're going to look at 4 different categories. One is, what were young people doing to consume content, create content, what were habit forming and addictive behaviors, and what kind of boundaries and parental controls existed. So if you were 12 years old, 1980 or earlier, what did you have? So on the sidebar in the black, you see there were no computers at home, there were no video game consoles at home, and you couldn't go out and get a VCR tape to watch a recording. So how did we consume content? Well, we listened to the radio. I'm saying we because this is my category. Consume content by listening to the radio, records, cassettes, watching TV, movies, reading books, magazines. Very simple stuff compared to what the kids have today, right? And how did you create content? Very simple things you could write. You might be able to publish a letter in a newspaper. You might be able to take a photograph and get it developed. Again, these things look arcane. What were bad or habit forming media at that time? TV addiction, music, bad music lyrics, inappropriate magazines. And what did your parents have to do to control all this? Well, they could censor the things that were arriving in the mail, not allow subscriptions, not allow a TV in the house. Maybe that happened to some of you. So within a decade, a lot changed. So in that intervening decade, we had some people with computers at home. You had video game consoles at home. You know, maybe you had an Atari. You had personal audio devices like a Walkman, VCRs, video cameras, and dial-up internet. And how did you consume content? You could play video games, listen to personal music that the rest of your family couldn't hear on your stereo. You could rent videos, go to Blockbuster. There were already internet bulletin boards. You could create some content too if you had access to a computer. And then, so each of these decades that I'm showing you builds upon the previous decade. The stuff from before doesn't go away, it still exists. So I'm adding new things that happened in those 10 years. Bad or habit forming media, you could rent questionable movies, which didn't used to come on TV before, or have violent or addictive video games. And what did your parents do to stop this? They could take away or not even buy you the physical devices you needed to do those things. So fast forward another 10 years, a lot happened. Families have computers at home. They even have laptops at home. There's wired internet, digital cameras, basic phones. But that's a big deal because you could call your friends without tying up your home phone. There were PDAs like Blackberries, MP3 players, multiplayer internet games, and internet gambling, internet chat, remember MSN or AOL or something like that. And then by then you were surfing websites and using search engines. You might be looking at other people's photos that were uploaded because there were digital cameras. You could create websites, blogs, and more advanced graphic design, video editing. So what was the habit forming or bad media? Unsavory content on websites as the proliferation of websites continued. Early internet socialization, texting addictions started. And what did the parents do? Well, they could put the family computer in a public space, right? They could meter the amount of internet they paid for, and they could decide what software to purchase on CDs because we weren't downloading software as yet. There were, you could easily just block some websites by installing some filters on your computer. Another 10 years, I don't know if anyone in this meeting today was 12 years old in 2010, but smartphones are there, Wi-Fi is there, cellular data is there, there are iPods, tablets, laptops. There's a lot more content to consume. There are fancier search engines that will find you images, books, people's personal data, so you could just, scam somebody or stalk them. You can have internet anywhere, anytime by 2010. And people are posting personal news and videos that were previously nobody else's business because everyone could do that, right? Bad or habit forming media, well, there were social media sites by then. And people were starting to get gratification from having followers or likes. And you also have a lot of plagiarism of content because it's so easy to do that. Just copy and paste it somewhere else. So what kind of boundaries and controls did we have as parents? Well, the schools didn't require the kids to have personal devices, so you could delay purchasing things like that for your kids. You didn't have to get them a smartphone right away. You didn't have to get them a laptop. You could limit how much cellular data they had for the devices because it still costs money. Everything wasn't unlimited. And you could still have browsers that didn't use cookies and share your private data for advertising. Okay, so here we are, 2021, it's really bleak. So we have powerful smartphones, we have smartwatches, we have personal assistants, we have video conferencing all the time, 24/7 we're consuming content. I mean, Snapchat is on here twice because I think people use it twice as much. I just noticed that, but you name it. I just wrote some sites that our young people are using. Creating content, sure, you could do all the stuff that was done before, but probably someone's already done it. So just copy it and share it as your own, share it as a meme, or dub a deep fake video and pretend that somebody's saying words that they didn't say. Bad or habit forming media, well, we are drowning in it because brains are becoming rewired to become attuned to the instant gratification of a ping. Excuse me. And boundaries and control. Well, you can see that it's getting much, much harder, right? Our words and actions are going to have to guide our kids. So here we are. For your tasks as a parent, what do we have? Okay, so you need to decide as a parent how you're going to position the role of technology in your child's life. So it is maybe crucial to their learning. Is it crucial to the rest of their existence? Where are they allowed to use this technology, and how many hours they're allowed to use it? We're going to talk a little bit about the limits later. So it's you as the parent who should be deciding what the role of technology is. The second one is really important. As parents, you need to stay a step ahead and don't act clueless. So don't say, oh, I just don't know how that works, or my kid is the only one who can figure out how to set this up or to do the settings on the computer. Take some time to learn how things work, and don't let your kid think that you don't know anything about what they're doing. And this takes a little bit of time, especially if you're not somebody who's already working with computers, regularly. You do need to spend some time, but it's really important to let the kids remember who's in charge. And it doesn't have to be both parents. It could be one parent who takes that lead. This is important too. Model the behavior you want them to follow. So obviously, if they see their parent is on their device all the time and is involved in social media all the time and has no limits for themselves, that's what the kid is going to model. So it is really important to set the parameters of what you want your kids to be doing by what you're doing. I think we have people trying to be admitted. But do encourage creation and creativity, because the technology that your kids have in their hands is very useful for helping them to be creative. And there are many sites, many programs, all kinds of software that can encourage that. They can learn new talents, they can learn new hobbies by using their creativity. So I'm not suggesting to block the use of technology from your kids, because they need it. They're going to need it to succeed as creative human beings. Discourage overconsumption. I think that's obvious. I'll give you some tips afterwards how to discourage overconsumption. And I think I have one more thing on here. Set boundaries. So setting boundaries can be talking to your kids about these boundaries, setting physical boundaries, setting limitations on what they can access, and we'll get to that as well. So what do you have in your toolbox? Okay, so I've listed 5 things here, and my next 5 slides are going to discuss these one by one. So you can take a look at these, and then as I get to the slides, we'll go over them. Okay, so number 1, discuss expectations candidly. So by discuss, I mean maybe you as parents discuss. And then when your kid is at an age where they're ready to discuss, and that age could be as young as 5 or 6, or even earlier, but by the time they're at an age where you can have a discussion with them, there are things that they will want to know, like, when can I do this? What age will I get a personal device? What age will I get a phone? It's not too early to start talking about it, but if they're 5 or 6, you're probably going to tell them to wait till they're 12 or 13. It depends on what your circumstances are with your kid. If your kid is going to be walking home from school when they're 10, maybe you need them to have something. So of course it depends from family to family, but they're going to want to know what their future holds. If they have a device, what are their time limits? Is there a certain amount of time that they're allowed to have free play or game time or communication, social time? You need to discuss this. So again, like I said, discuss it as parents, and also parents discuss it as kids. Who can they interact with? This is pretty important because as kids become more and more social, they're 10, 11 years old, they want to interact with all their classmates. Maybe they want to interact with the kids they're meeting at sports or other activities. Maybe those kids have other friends. You need to set your limits, who it's safe for them to text with or talk with or FaceTime with. What are their spending limits? Because they might be downloading apps, they might be downloading software, whether it's on their computer or their tablet or their phone. They shouldn't think that they have unlimited, spending capability. Very, very basic things like what kinds of images, language, and videos are off limits. Now, I mean, this is a parenting thing that should always be discussed, whether it was technology that existed or not. If you remember, as early as the 1980s, I said, well, the parents could stop the magazines from coming into the house, right? So this is a conversation to have. If something goes wrong, they've seen something or overspent or wasted their time, assure them that they can come to you, because the last thing you want is behavior that's spiraling out of control and they're not telling you and endangering themselves. So do assure them that if something is out of their control, they did something beyond their limits, they should come to you. And that's another discussion to have. All right, this one I think is important, especially as your kids get to be maybe over 10 years old. Discuss your own experiences and challenges, because we all have them, right? And especially with teens, these are things that actually they would be comfortable discussing. Is the parent, are the parents going through things that they might have experienced or might experience in the future? Like, as a parent, do you worry about your own overdependence on your device? Are you happy or unhappy with your own social media experience? And you can talk to them and say, well, I saw this and this made me uncomfortable. And maybe they have the same experience, or maybe they will keep that in their mind, like, oh, I shouldn't be in such a situation. For example, is your personality the same on social media or as it is in person? Or have you done or said anything online that you wouldn't face to face? So in a way, you're asking them or advising them not to do that. And maybe opening up yourself to discussion to, like, oh, I almost did that. Has anything on social media ever bothered or offended you? Compare stories with them. And again, this is for, maybe a 12-year-old and up. How you use technology in your work, personal communication, to how they're using it in school. And even for younger kids, can you participate with your child in the site that they're going on frequently, maybe a game site or something, or activity that they're interested in, to learn more about it? And has isolation due to COVID-19 changed your relationship with technology? So these are things that parents can ask themselves and talk to their kids about their own experiences with. Okay, discuss good and bad features and outcomes. Okay, so these are things to discuss with your kids. The fact that most sites want to encourage repeat interactions, right? They want users to come back. They want them to make an account. They want them to come back so that the advertisers, will be there. The fact that sites are collecting data from users. So whether it's, when you signed up and they got your address and your age and your your favorite color or your pet name or something like that, right? those questions that they have on the side, they're collecting data, and kids need to be aware of that. What are you giving away about yourself when you answer those questions? How are you making other people feel by your speech? That is a very important conversation to have, and we'll get in a little more into that afterwards. And then people, kids, adults, both think that they're anonymous and they can speak freely, right? They can put down people, they can bully people because no one will be able to trace it back to them. It still should not be done. Sometimes for kids and for adults, and this is what we're learning in the last 2 weeks, as Brother Fessel said too, it's hard to distinguish truth from falsehood. And that is another tool that kids need to be able to deal with this. Like, if they have questions like, is this true? Is this a fact? Who are they going to turn to? And then the risk of putting too much trust in certain voices and sources. So back in the day when there was no social media, sometimes kid trusted one kid in their grade who always had all the answers and who was a smart aleck and just was, maybe the most pushy kid, and what they said went. And now you don't have to even know that person in person, as a individual. But putting too much trust in certain voices is a fear. Oops, sorry about that. Just a second. Sorry, so I've skipped to, I have a few slides here that have this orange background. And these are samples of the kind of activities and questions we are putting in the 7th and 8th grade curriculum. It's this module is a social media unit that's going to be, I'm forgetting whether it's 7th or 8th grade, so I'm just calling it middle school. So this is a session with a class discussion. And you can see the teacher instructions here. And the questions that's being posed to them, are these two. So the group is going to brainstorm about benefits and drawbacks. Take just a quick look at the teacher instructions here. Okay, so then they've done their brainstorming, and we have a list for them to discuss as a class. So what are the benefits of social media? What are the dangers of social media? And the kids at this age may have come up with even more things. I mean, that we as adults have not thought about, and their benefits and their dangers next year may be different than this year, or in 2 years, things may have changed. You can take a look at those. Okay, so the next category that I had as your toolbox for parents is what kind of parental controls you can exercise. Okay, so I think one really important one is the first one on here. Require that you as a parent know their passwords up to a certain age, their passwords for their email, their PIN for their phone, their other sites that they're using. What is that age, right? What is that age? So, I mean, in my experience, it would probably be up to about 13 or 14. So a 14-year-old who's going off to high school, you're gonna have to trust them at some point, because they should know that you are trusting them as a parent, but you can decide as a family whether that's the age, whether it's until they go to college. I mean, that might be a little bit, extended, but every family has a different age that works for them. For us, it was really when they went to high school, so around 14. For younger kids, learn how to customize the child's device to have a simple interface. They don't need to have all the different apps that they're not going to use showing on there. If they have the phone for the purpose of making phone calls, and maybe a few emergency texts if they need to, make it simple. Set limits on their accounts on the computers. So both Windows and Mac have the ability to do this for parents. And again, at a certain age, they would have already figured out what your password is. And that's probably going to be before the first bullet on here, when you require that you know all their passwords, because kids are sharp. But set limits on their accounts, set the parental controls on their phones and tablets. There are a lot of tools out there. We just have to be able to use them. For the search engine that they're using, whether it's Google or something else, set the safe search options. And yes, eventually your kids will learn to turn them off if they really want to, but at least it gives them a good start. And tell them that you're setting it just for their safety. Set their limits on YouTube for the types of videos that they're getting. Tell them that you're limiting emails and texts only to people that you have put in their address book or you have approved in their address book. And learn how to configure your home router. For the extreme cases, if they're accessing wireless or your home network and not through cellular data, you can turn off certain sites. If they're on cellular data, then you've got something else in your hands, right? You can, if you're paying for the phone, then you decide how that's going to be. This is a very extreme thing, but it is possible because all the internet in your house is going through the router that you get from either Verizon or Comcast, whatever. But the last 2 points are important, right? Because your children are going to grow into young adults. Face the fact that they are curious. They're curious from a young age. They'll be curious as teens. And face the fact that your child will have to make independent decisions at some age. So your job is to arm them with the right decision-making capabilities of what they should be taking in and what they shouldn't be. The next part here, and this is again going to touch upon some things that we're trying to build into the curriculum, is inspiration from Islamic values. So I'll show you a couple of slides after this about modesty of speech, modesty of behavior. So we have a unit that is about Islamic interactions, how to behave with people, how to behave in your outlook, in your presentation. Avoiding envy, rumor, backbiting, and gossip. And in the younger grades in Sunday school, the younger grade elementary books talk about the problems with these and how Muslims are not supposed to engage in this kind of behavior. Be kind and do not offend others with your words and actions. And again, this doesn't even have to do only with technology, right? This has to do with how you live your life and what you are teaching your kids on behaving. Don't be arrogant. Again, that's not only with technology, but how does it apply in what you're doing on social media? Intentions are very important, right? So, for us as Muslims, our intention is important. We teach our kids that our intentions are important. So that works both ways, that if they did not intend to see something bad, do something bad, say something bad, they can ask Allah for forgiveness because it wasn't their intention. And again, if they think their parents are not watching, they need to remember the big picture also, that Allah is watching. So this again is an example of some of the content that we have about modesty of speech. You can take a look at that. Very basic things. And then that discussion is followed, that's followed by a discussion about speech and conduct. And there are questions on here that kids may want to discuss with the teacher, may want to discuss with each other. Is texting the same as speech? If I said something, is that the same as if I texted it? What if I don't say those things out loud, but I write them down? Yes, is that as hurtful? And kids need to understand that. And then, how can modesty guide me on what I watch on TV and internet and what I post online? It should guide everyone. So this is sort of building in the Islamic values into how they conduct themselves, whether it's online or in person. And the next two slides actually have information that may be part of sort of a role playing or a Q&A part of the classes that are on social media. So we have an example here. So you want to be an influencer, right? So what's an influencer? This is the 2020s equivalent of being a celebrity or a TV star or a movie star. So this is directed towards the kids. So talk through these things, right? So who are some of these people? Here's some of the things they do. But what does it mean to curate a presence on the internet? And what are the pitfalls? And how are they displaying only the parts of their identity that they want people to know about, but not the reality? What behaviors fall outside Islamic norms and which are permitted? And what do these personalities give up from their private lives, and how long can they maintain them? So one thing, I mean, I guess I didn't put it on a slide, but between this one and the next example that comes after this, I think what we're trying to get the kids to understand is that social media and Islam are compatible. There are good things about it. There are good things that you can use social media for a positive identity. You can use it for spreading the message of Islam, or spreading the message of kindness. So it's not that we're teaching them that you can't take part in these things, but how to think of them in the big picture of being a young Muslim person. The next one, so you want to be a foodstagrammer. I don't know if it's a real word, but it's used somewhere. So they want to take pictures of their food and put them on Instagram. Wherever they go, they take pictures of their food. So here's what they should be doing, right? Thinking about their motives and discussing what is and isn't acceptable. So it could be, I'm learning how to cook, and here's my first attempt. Or I'm such an amazing cook. Or I love to travel and try new exotic foods. I'm so adventurous. Or I can afford it to eat at this restaurant, and you probably will never be able to. So what are the different thoughts that can go into this kind of public display, right, of your activities, and what is good to be doing, what is not desirable, what does it mean, what does it look like to other people? Okay, so basically now these are 4 key points that I want you to take away from this. It's important that you partner with your child. And I say child, I mean teen, young person, could be you're a kid in college, because it's never too late to have these discussions. Be on the same page when it comes to these things. Number 1, content, right? So we've talked about this throughout the thing. What's unacceptable for them to see, hear? It's no different than when there was only TV, right? So, or just movies, and parents had to set parameters. What rated movie could they see? What television show could they see? Are they allowed to watch TV after 9 o'clock? Things like that. Same type of discussions need to be had with social media, with the internet, with the technology that's in their hands. They're going to bed with that phone in their hands, but the acceptability or the unacceptability still matters. The interactions that they have with people. Should they be a party to meanness or rumor, gossip, bullying? Haven't brought up bullying yet. That's a big, big part of social media. If they witness these things, what should they do? If they're not party to it, and they care about someone who's going through these things, what should they do? That's why you have to partner with your young person, right? So that they could come to you and tell you that something bad is happening. Privacy, that's an important thing too. Someone asks you for info that you wouldn't tell them in person or show them in person. So your kid joins a game, a very innocuous game website, and at some point a dialogue comes up and says, you can access this if you just enter your parents' credit card number, and they go to the wallet and they get the credit card number and they enter it. So maybe a 7-year-old might even do that because nobody's talked to them about it's not right to put certain information into your computer, no matter who's asking for it, no matter how safe it seems. So you don't want them telling their mother's maiden name. You don't want them telling all the things that identify us and allow us to get a new credit card or something like that. Even a 12-year-old might not be aware of the importance of key pieces of private information. So talk about privacy. There are a lot of resources out there. There's resources on code.org that talk about digital privacy, digital citizenship. There are many, many sites that talk about what to watch out for. And the last one is danger, because when self-policing is not enough. So your child is witnessing somebody in danger. Somebody is going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, or they themselves feel like they're deeper than they can get out of. They need to know that they can turn to you, or there is a trusted adult in their life that they can turn to, because there's too many kids that are just going deep under with the technology that's in their hands. And the last slide is just a fun slide. And that's it. And I'm sure that you all have lots of questions. This talks just about the things that were on the last slide over there, the content, the interaction, the privacy, and the danger part.
Saadia, let me know when you want me to remove the recording or stop the recording. Is this a good time? Or?
Yeah, this is good. And I'm going to stop the share right now, I think, right? Because we want to do questions.